Hey guys, I'm back. This is the second part of my analysis onto my star. If you haven't watched the first part, I recommend you to do so because we will continue from where we left it last time, which is to analyze episode by episode the development of Sejun and Jiu's relationship. So I hope you enjoy it. Episode 4. Do you remember what I said about how much I love the pacing of the story? Well, this episode is one of the reasons why I think the pacing is perfect. Let me explain. In a lot of dramas, the story generally starts with a trope from enemies to lovers or love at first sight, which means that you'd rather hate a person and suddenly this hate becomes love, or instantly you fall in love the first moment you see that person. In both cases, there is no in between. There is no time for the characters to actually getting to know each other. The dynamics between the characters change from one episode to another. And you may argue like, hey, Jiu and Sejun didn't like each other at the beginning. Yes, but this dynamic doesn't last the entire story, and mostly their interactions are not represented by extreme emotions such as hate or love, but rather there's a spectrum of emotions in between, and one of the things that we find in between is friendship. I really appreciate that even if the story is brief, there is time dedicated to portraying these characters, creating a connection, talking, having fun, communicating their feelings, sharing their past. It feels like a breath of fresh air because this is not a love relationship that will originate from passionate hate, weird codependency stuff, obsession, or infatuation, but this will be a relationship that will come out of friendship, comfort, and trust. Romantic love is such a complex thing for me to try to define it, but I think that friendship, respect, and genuine care for the other person are key elements in a healthy relationship. So I love that this drama dedicated one entire episode to build this relationship first before moving forward. It makes sure that its characters feel comfortable with one another. We get to see the first Jiu's shy smiles, the first sparks of chemistry and camaraderie, and yes, there is one or two romantic insinuations such as Kang Seo-joon unconscious flirty behavior, but in general it's just two men getting to know each other. This is not love yet, this is just friendship, but that by itself is already beautiful. Episode 5. The montage at the beginning of episode 5 is hands down one of my favorite sequences of the entire series. I really enjoyed watching their friendship dynamic and seeing how much Jiu opened himself towards Kang Seo-joon as a friend through his concern for him and the way he always wanted to protect him. The sequence is short, but in little time is able to show us their growing friendship and how comfortable they have become around one another. But you know, this is not just a story about two good friends. With time, their relationship starts to evolve into something else. At first, it's maybe unnoticeable. Jiu is unconsciously very protective and thoughtful to Kang Seo-joon, and Sejun unconsciously flirts and craves Jiu's attention. But as with most things in life, there is a moment when they realize that there is something different. They no longer can hide these emotions, and that's when things get complicated. You see, Sejun is a free-spirited person who goes with the flow of his emotions. He's someone who embraces his feelings and is not afraid to express them, while Jiu is someone who has difficulties to be in touch with his emotions, mostly when they have to do with another person. At the beginning of the episode, Jiu was feeling comfortable because they were just friends, but as he gets more and more conscious of his feelings towards Sejun, he gets scared and starts to act defensively. Even if some people would think that he was just being cranky, I think that his reaction is so relatable for introverts, because as an introverted person, you are pretty aware that this person is very special to you, but you have no way of knowing if this is reciprocal, because some of the things that you would only do towards a very special person may be things that extroverted people would do with anyone, and that can be very frustrating and scary, because your feelings keep growing in this uncertainty of emotions. So I totally get Jiu's attitude. But at this point, Sejun has become a master at reading Jiu's emotions. So once he finds out this romantic spark, Sejun lets his emotions flow. And of course, he drags Jiu all the way down with him. Episode 6. The kissing scene is extremely immersive. I would say that even if Bilhyun and Hamin are there, Sejun totally steals the scene. It is almost like he put a spell on Jiu and now suddenly there is just the two of them. But when the spell is broken, Jiu comes back to his senses and he is confused, of course. He doesn't know how to feel about it because he got caught by Sejun. But he doesn't know how Sejun feels. Was the alcohol? Was he playing? Jiu has no way of knowing it, and that frustrates him because at this point, his feelings are too strong to be just denied. If I could describe this episode in one word, I would say confrontation, because both characters have to face their feelings and decide what they will do with them. Sejun, who at this point was just going with the flow of his emotions without really questioning himself why, now has to actually deal with his feelings because he knows better than anyone that alcohol only brought to the surface what deep down has been growing all along. He realizes that the way he has been acting sort of frames him as a player. This moment coincides with his talk with Yoon-sul about the scandal, and Sejun has to face that sometimes not saying the truth can be the same as accepting false accusations. So he decides to confront his feelings. There is something so beautiful about the straightforwardness of his confession and the way he handles rejection. Sejun is a confident person who knows that no matter what his feelings are, they are valuable and must be respected. His attitude is really refreshing in comparison to a lot of male characters in dramas because when he's confessing, he doesn't do it to force his feelings on Jiu, but rather he just wants to be honest. And when he gets rejected, he confronts Jiu. Not because he's trying to make Jiu change his mind, but rather he's standing up for his feelings to be respected. He knows that even if liking someone can put you in a vulnerable situation, that doesn't give them permission to humiliate you. Episode 7. Sorry if I come back a lot to episode 6, but I have to give you context in order to analyze the heated answer Jiu had to Sejun's confession. In episode 6, more than being cold, he was waiting for an answer. He knew Sejun was drunk at the time of the kiss, but he was still hoping to know if Sejun was being serious or not. At the restaurant, when Sejun felt jealous and Jiu discovered that Sejun remembered what happened, Jiu suddenly becomes really attentive as he's waiting to listen to what Sejun meant the day before. But he doesn't get the answer he expected. You can read the disappointment in his face. It is like, if you don't know why you did it, then it means that you were just playing around with me. That's why, at the moment of the confession, it is hard for Jiu to believe that Sejun actually likes him, because in his perspective, Sejun seems to be changing his mind from one moment to another. One can say like, hey, Sejun was also figuring out his feelings. Yes, but I think that Jiu finds himself in a much more vulnerable place than Sejun. Firstly, because he is an introvert and Sejun is an extrovert. And this situation is amplified because Sejun is not a normal person. He is rich, confident, and famous, while Jiu is someone who has been always looked down by other people by his educational background and financial situation. One slight detail that adds tension in this scene is that even though at this moment Jiu was already hurt, he still bought the saffron that Sojun wanted. And you may not know it, but saffron is damn expensive. So I think that receiving this confession at this exact moment, with all of the emotional background that he has, made him feel really hurt, because being pitied can be more humiliating than being played. But thanks God our puppy boy is really smart. You see, Sejun is not just my crush, he's also sort of like my role model. I mean, I think that Sejun was right for standing up for his feelings, but I think that it is so admirable that instead of getting all defensive and get angry because of the rude reply, he comforted Jiu when he realized the vulnerable place from which Jiu was talking to him. I think that one of the most beautiful characteristics of Sejun is to not assume things and to trust till the very end in the people that he cares about. Because at this moment, instead of keep hurting Jiu and play the victim, he chose a much harder and mature decision, which is to apologize. Sometimes we don't want to accept it, but shared vulnerability is one of the things that builds meaningful connections with people. So if Sejun wouldn't have go out of himself, he wouldn't have given Jiu the opportunity to open himself and be vulnerable. And instead, Jiu would have just closed more, and probably they would just feel miserable and hurt by their own. You know, I have no words to explain how comforting and beautiful the hug scene is. It is like the whole atmosphere gives you this feeling of presenting yourself naked and vulnerable in front of another person, knowing that this someone will never hurt you. There's a saying that says something like, "Even if I can solve my own problems, I appreciate that you are here with me." Because Jiu is not a weak person. He is very much capable of taking care of himself, but it is something beautiful to know that he can rest easy in Sejun's arms, to know that he can find comfort and shelter in another person besides himself. Overall, this episode was very powerful because it seemed like things were going in the right way. I mean, Sejun confronted his feelings and vulnerabilities both in love and in his career, and Jiu was on his way of fully opening himself to Sejun until Hyungi had another plan. So we're really close to the end, guys. In the next video, I want to finish the episodic analysis and finally talk about the side characters. I know that I already talk a lot about Sejun and Jiu. Sorry, I'm obsessed with them. But I may say one or two highlights of their personality, such as things that are not exactly in one episode, but rather patterns that you find in the entire series. So look forward to it. See you next time.